Hey there, welcome to another Draw With Me video. Let's jump right into this little papillon drawing. This was a commission for a former boss of mine. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I already have a really light line drawing done. I always start with a light drawing that's very basic. I don't need a lot of detail, just placeholders or landmarks, if you will. That way I don't have to scrutinize it every 5 minutes to keep track of where I'm at in the portrait. Again, I'm not sure if my line drawing is showing up on the video, but that's really how light it should be. That way I don't have to erase anything, it just gets covered over as I draw. So I'll apologize now for the traffic noise and the birds. Can you actually hear the birds? It's a nice day today, and I opted to have the window open instead of the AC. So I'm using a blending stump here to soften some lines. I like to sometimes use the graphite that's already on there to draw. And I don't know if you notice that sometimes I hold my pencil funny, but it's for a reason. This allows me to use the side of the graphite instead of the tip. That does two things. I don't get defined lines, and I get a softer shaded area instead. And the second thing is I keep my pencil sharp, which means I don't have to sharpen it as often. I only bring it up because one day my sister saw one of my videos and asked me why I was holding my pencil funny. So yeah, no shade to anyone who holds their pencil like that, but if I keep my pencil on its side, it does keep me from having to sharpen my pencil as often. So I'll say something here about reference photos for like if you're wanting to do pet commissions yourself. Make sure that the pet owner gives you a suitable photo, or take one yourself if you're able to. This one was not ideal in my opinion. Boss lady thought it was cute though, so I went with it for her. But I'll tell you why it wasn't ideal for me. The dog was facing the sun, which made him squint. And for me personally, my favorite thing in the world to draw is eyes. That's where you catch the personality, their individual character, windows to the soul, that sort of thing. And if I can't see the eyes clearly, I feel like it makes my job harder in trying to portray the animal's personality. And another thing to consider when you're doing commissions from photos is lighting, obviously, as is in this case. You don't want it too bright or too dark. You're just going to make your job a whole lot harder in trying to see all of the details in an over or underexposed photo. The same thing with people portraits. You want to find a position for your subject where they will be well lit and still able to keep their eyes open and not all squinty like this dog here. The other thing to keep in mind is the angle that the subject is in relation to the camera. In the case of pets, owners often take the photo from a standing position, and this often creates awkward positions for the animal as they have to look up. In many cases, it creates a weird perspective issue where the animal's head looks way too big and the paws look tiny. So, if possible, get down as close to their level as possible. Now, this may mean that you have to let curious pets get over the newness of the camera or phone before they let you get a decent shot in. Okay, so now I'm using a blending stump again. If you don't already know or have never used one, a blending stump is it's tightly rolled paper that you use to blend. A lot of people use their fingers to blend, and that's a big no-no for me, at least for when it comes to work that I'm going to sell. The reason being that I don't want the natural oils in my skin to transfer to the paper. That's also why my hand is resting on another sheet of paper. Two things can happen when you're touching the paper. One, when you're trying to draw over that same spot, depending on the medium that you're using, it can affect the color and or the value of because the medium will stick to the oil differently than the rest of the paper. And two, as the drawing ages, that spot can begin to discolor. So like the paper will turn yellow. So I just think of it as if I were the buyer, how would I feel if I put my hard-earned money into a drawing that eventually started to color with age? So here I'm using an engraving tool. Usually I do this after I get my line drawing done. The tool has a little tiny ballpoint metal tip, so I use that to engrave fur or whiskers that need to show up over darker background. Once that indentation is made in the paper, when I go over it with a pencil, the engraved line stays nice and white. You don't have to buy an engraving tool. If you have a used up ballpoint pen, you can use that too, so long as you're 100% positive that there's no more ink in it. So what I'm doing here now is I'm just going all around the dog, looking for areas where his white fur hangs over darker areas. It's important when you're using that engraving tool to not go overboard with it, because it just looks really weird, like he's got this weird porcupine look. So subtlety is best, because not every single hair is going to be in focus all at the same time. So this is about where I start to notice that I didn't like the texture of this paper. And unfortunately, I can't remember which paper it was, but you can see it under the dog's ear a little bit. There's this pattern, little dark dots. That means I'm going to have to go back through with the pencil and fill in the little valleys of texture to match the darker spots. It's a real pain. It takes me twice as long to finish. I did eventually find a paper that I really like, which is Strathmore 300 series Bristol. I get it in a roll. It's 42 inches by 10 yards long. It does come in pads too, but it seems to feel different to me somehow, so I prefer just getting the roll and cutting it down to whatever size I need. So I will list the one that I like, the Strathmore, in the description, and not the one that I'm using here in this video. And of course, I'll also list all the other things that I'm using too. So years ago, somebody clued me in and let me know that you can actually you can actually contact paper companies, and sometimes manufacturers will send you a set of samples, usually about 5x7-ish or 8x10-ish. It's enough for you to actually test the paper out. I don't remember having to pay for it. Maybe I paid for shipping, but at any rate, you won't have to waste money on a whole pad that you don't like. So now I'm using erasers and blending stumps to try to get rid of that stupid texture. I was seriously wanting to scrap this one and start over, but I didn't have enough time to order new paper. I live in Hawaii and I don't have access to all the nice big art supply stores that are on the mainland. I'm originally from California, and I had 2 art stores near where I lived, and one of them was a Blick, so I got a little bit spoiled there. So it's not like I can just order, and have it show up the very next day. There is a tiny art store, and they don't near me, and they don't carry the Strathmore paper roll that I like. So I have to plan ahead, make sure that I order in time, make sure my inventory is all stocked up. Depending on what I need, I'll purchase from either Jerry's Artorama, Blick, or Amazon. It's strange how in 2025 there's no option in online shipping where you can get an aerosol can. I mean, I get it, like they're no bueno on a plane, right? But so much so that, like, can't you have an option to ship me my fixative, my spray fixative by cargo boat maybe? I don't know. Like Home Depot gets aerosols, but I always use a fixative when I'm done so that the work doesn't smudge en route to their owners once I ship it. Anyway, rant over. So now I'm using the tip of a pencil to get some details in the fur. It's kind of tricky when you're drawing in black and white to get enough detail and shadow into white or light fur. If you do too much, you lose the appearance of light fur. And I believe I'm using an H or an HB pencil here. And that helps because it's a very hard graphite, which means it makes lighter marks. So now I'm starting to draw in the floorboards underneath the dog. Usually I leave out backgrounds unless the client specifically requests it. I try to keep the animal the center of attention, and if there's a lot of background clutter, it draws the viewer's eye away from the pet. Normally I draw a plain wall and floor with just the shadow of the pet to connect it to the ground. That way it doesn't look like it's floating. But in this case, the boards of the deck that this dog is on isn't too distracting, so I left them in. But I did eliminate the bricks and the potted plant in the background. And here I am switching back and forth between holding my pencil funny again to use the side of the graphite to cover more territory while shading, and using the tip in order to draw the detail of the wood grain. And I'm also using blending stumps and cotton swabs to blend. The blending stump will leave more of a defined line because it does have a point on it. So I always try to remember to wipe the tip off, because sometimes when you forget, you end up with a dark spot on your paper. When I want a soft blend, I'll use a cotton swab. That makes an even softer blend. Or cotton rounds like the ones people use for makeup removal. And the bonus is that they're super cheap. You can get them at Target or Walmart, like $2 for 100 pads. And you can get them anywhere. So I think Amazon has them too. And I'm all for using household products whenever possible because it's super convenient. Word of advice, though, it doesn't matter if you're just practicing, but if you intend to sell your work, make sure that whatever you're using doesn't have any dyes or moisturizers or any added ingredients, for the same reason why I don't touch paper with my hands. Those added ingredients could damage your paper over time. And the cotton swabs and cotton rounds are 100% cotton, so that shouldn't be a problem. Oh my God. The texture of the paper drove me crazy with this one. So I get asked about reference photos quite a bit. Like, is it okay to use them? Somewhere along the line, I guess, someone said that you're less of an artist if you use one. I mean, how ridiculous is that? It's actually rare for an artist to be able to draw everything strictly from their mind with no reference whatsoever. Like, even the old masters used references. They had live models, for crying out loud. That's a reference. Are you going to tell me that Michelangelo and Da Vinci were not real artists because they used models? Come on. First of all, most of us don't have access to people who would pose for us with or without clothing. And second, for animal artists, have you ever tried to get an animal to sit still for any length of time? Right? Okay, so don't beat yourself up over that. It's just silly. Also, apologize for the glare. This is a bad glare on this one. It's one problem that I do have with graphite. It tends to get shiny. So, still working on the floorboards here. Oh, you can see where I use that embossing tool a little bit. The little bit of fur that lies above the shadow under the dog's arm. My usual method is to leave some of the hair individual and some of them all grouped together, like, clumps of hair. Because hair and fur naturally clumps together. And sometimes you see individual hairs. So kind of mix it up. It looks more natural. And speaking of using references, the other day I was watching a PBS docuseries called Civilizations, and it piqued my interest because it's all about art history, and that was my jam in art school. And there was one segment that talked about prehistoric cave paintings. I think the most famous one is in Lascaux, France. But there are cave paintings all over the world. But anyway, the show spoke about how detailed and accurate the animal drawings were in this cave. And what struck me was it's not like these people dragged a bison into the cave or a cow or a lion or whatever, but they somehow managed to get the depiction of each animal in proportion and with accurate details. So I thought maybe it was just as simple as having less cluttered brains. Like these days we got so much going on in our heads, social media, kids, whatever, that we have less room to remember details like that. Primitive humans didn't have all the mental clutter, so maybe they were just able to retain the visual information better. Maybe. What do you think? Comment below if you have an idea about that. So the fur I'm drawing here is darker than it should be. The dog's chest fur is white, but I drew the shadows in a little bit darker because I knew I'd be going back in with an eraser and using the eraser to draw in white fur overlapping the shadows in the fur. I hope that makes sense. Also going back over going back to the overexposed reference photos. If you overexpose a photo of white furred or feathered animals, you lose any hint of existing shadows. So that's kind of the issue I have here. So I had to make it up kind of as I went along. Now, when it comes to realistic fur or hair, it's important to remember that if it's longer than a buzz cut, it never goes all in the same direction unless it's heavily gelled into place. Hair naturally falls in different directions, the exception being people who have super straight hair and they're standing stock still and not moving a muscle, and there isn't the slightest hint of a breeze. So even straight-haired folks' hair crosses over each other, falls in different sections, and it's easier to look for those larger clumps of hair or fur and draw them as you see them. You don't get to the hair of your subject and just say, okay, this is hair, I'm going to draw it all in one direction, because then it ends up looking like a helmet. No, so you're going to look at your reference and study it. A lot of beginners hardly ever look at their reference, and they just draw based on what they think they know. And the truth is they don't know much about it at all. You gotta really study your reference photo. And again, no shade if you're doing that, because it's rare that somebody can do without. So I'm finally getting around to drawing the eye. Usually I get to it pretty quickly, but I think I was so put off by this paper's texture that I delayed drawing it. And eyes are my favorite, so I usually like to get to it quickly. Oh, and also, it's a squinty eye again. I absolutely love when eyes are large and expressive, and there's distinct highlights and shadows, and because those are just so much fun to me. And that's what draws people into the drawing. I know some artists who start with the eyes no matter where they are in the paper or canvas, but for me, I like working left to right so I don't smudge. But these artists start with the eye because, like, if you can't get the eye right, they scrap the whole thing and start all over, and I get it because eyes are that important. Shoot, so sorry about the glare, guys. Starting on the nose here, and yes, he did have a little mustache. I'm not sure if that was actually fur color or if it was discolored or stained. You know, it's like sometimes when animals have weepy eyes, the fur by their eyes gets stained. Anyway, dog noses are weird. They're just a really odd shape. Go look at one up close. It's weird. I'm going to take a second also to thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and giving me a follow, that would be fabulous. It will definitely help me to grow my channel. And if you have any questions about this drawing or my work in general, questions about art supplies, etc., just put it down in the comments and I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability. So here I'm softening the nose with I'm going between my pencil and a blending stump. I'm also trying to push graphite into the texture to get rid of that annoying pattern. Blending stumps are useful beyond blending. I often use it as my drawing tool because the tip gets loaded up with graphite, so I figure I might as well use it. And when I do, I always try to remember to test it out on a scrap paper first. There have been more times than I can count where I wanted a nice soft medium gray and I got an almost black line instead. So when I do use the stump to draw, or actually, when do I use the stump to draw rather than blend? So if the tip is still pointy enough, I'll use it to draw fur that's slightly out of focus. Sometimes I'll put a shadow with it. But it's something that I gradually build up as you go. I use blending stumps quite a bit for wood grain too. Yeah, blending stumps are great and they're cheap. So I'm continuing working with, actually, if you've seen me kind of switch off between a turquoise pencil and this darker blue one, I'm using Prismacolor Premier turquoise pencils, and the darker blue one is the Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencil. The turquoise ones feel a little bit harder to me than the Lumographs, so I use Lumographs when I need a darker line or a darker mark. Yeah, there are at least a couple more brands that I like as well, so if you're just starting out, don't feel like you have to use exactly what professionals use. If we're using them, they're more than likely a higher grade product, but you should still test them out. And pencils are relatively cheap, so you can buy a set to start off with. They have a standard set that contains H, or sometimes 2H through 6B or 8B. You can buy the pencils individually too, but getting a set is good, to start off with. Oh, and in case you're brand new to drawing and aren't familiar with the H and B's and all of that, it's just how manufacturers indicate hardness or softness of the graphite. H is a hard graphite. 2H is harder than H. Hard graphite puts down a very light gray mark. You're never going to get to black with an H pencil, much less 2H. That's why I prefer it here with this mostly white dog. There's an HB pencil that starts dipping into the softer graphite. The higher the number goes, the darker the mark. So personally, 85 to 90% of the time, I'm using 2B to 4B. And I only use 6 or 8B only when there's a truly, truly black area. And that's kind of rare. And sometimes you'll hear gatekeeper types telling you, a truly skillful artist only needs one pencil. If you don't want a dark mark, don't make a dark mark. Control your pressure. Big O sigh here. Okay, sure, if that floats your boat, if that's a point of pride for you, then you do you, boo-boo. Personally, if someone has made a thing that's going to make my work easier, then why wouldn't I use it? Like, seriously. Once upon a time, farming was done with hand tools or plows and that were pulled by horses, but someone invented a tractor, and the tractor could do it much easier and get the job done faster. And you don't have to maintain animals specifically for that task. There's not a farmer anywhere who's going to say all those machines are for sissies. I'm a real farmer. I do it by hand. Yeah, said no one ever. So, you know what? If you want to do the sets of graded hardnesses and softnesses, then do it. Like, seriously. I've also heard some people say that real artists don't use erasers. Like, what? If you're sure about the mark you're going to make, then you shouldn't need to erase. The first time I heard this was in one of my very first art classes, and that kind of haunted me for a while. Like, I felt guilty whenever I had to erase. From a professional point of view, yes, you want to erase as little as possible because it can damage the tooth or the texture of the paper, and that can be damn near impossible to disguise within your drawing. But for the most part, I mean, come on, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. It's fine. That's how we learn. Also, it's why I start with a super light drawing first and then add detail as I go. I never go in heavy-handed. I build it up slowly. So if I do find that something's off, I don't have to go crazy with an eraser. Anyway, the point of all that was to say, you're going to run into haters and gatekeepers and know-it-alls. And you know, just take it with a grain of salt. Don't bother arguing with them. The easiest way to shut them up is to thank them for their advice, unsolicited though it may have been. Haters and trolls, especially on the internet, hiding behind a keyboard. Oh, normally I don't engage, but from time to time I have. And it's usually a really dumb, lame comment like, dude, your work sucks. So I respond with, oh yeah, I'm struggling with some things, but I'm glad you took the time to comment. You seem to know what you're talking about. So can you tell me specifically what you're referring to? Can you give me some advice? Side note, a quick peek at their page tells me that they're not an artist at all. There's no artwork anywhere to be seen. Usually they ghost. Crickets, right? But every once in a while they'll come back with an equally lame, it just sucks. To which I respond with, do you really think it's that bad? Maybe you can show me how it's done. I'd love to see one of your videos. I might throw some artistic jargon in there like value or composition or proportion and what they think of it. And then they're gone. Poof, another Casper. So don't let them get to you. I suggest not engaging at all, but sometimes I can't help myself. It's fun. But feel free to make use of the block feature. That's what it's there for. Keep in mind that real professional artists won't give you unsolicited advice. It's just not something that you do. So if you get a hateful comment, go to their page. 99% of the time, they don't have any artwork on their page at all. They have no clue what they're talking about it, and they're just doing it to troll you. And seriously, who has time for that? Block, 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 block. I say block. I've made use of that feature a lot too, because, some people have nothing better to do. I knew one guy one professional artist who had a troll that every time he would get blocked, he'd create a new account just to get blocked again and then create a new account. It's seriously nothing better to do. So my best advice is don't engage. So I'm continuing with the deck. I'm going into the pause a little bit. using a blending stump for a lot of it because this image is so overexposed. I'm having to make up a lot of it as I go. One thing that would really help if you're struggling to figure out where to place your shadows is to do lighting studies. Set up like a small still life of random objects and put different types of light on it from different angles. Use different types of light even. The shadows created by a regular table lamp is going to be very different than if you have a bright ring light. Try using different setups. Put 2 lights on your still life, but that's like a little bit more advanced, but you can see what happens when you have multiple light sources. And eventually you're going to get good enough that it won't matter if you don't have a decent reference photo in terms of shadows. I mean, I'd still prefer to have one, but I can get by without it if I have to. Shadows are fun to do if you know where to put them. They're what grounds your subject or indicates their position in the space that you're drawing. Based on the shadow, you can tell where the light source is, where the sun is, for example. Is it high noon or is there barely any shadow under your subject, like this little dog? Or is it late afternoon with the sun low in the sky, giving your subject a really long, kind of distorted shadow? As you can see with this portrait, the sun is right up overhead. There's barely any shadow under the dog's paws, and if I were to use the shadow on the left side of the dog's body to plot the location of the sun, it would be almost directly overhead, like probably in a 1 o'clock position. And yes, in case you're wondering, shadows are plottable, and yes, you should plot them. It's okay to take an educated guess or even eyeball it, but if you really don't know what you're doing and you're just scribbling in random dark marks with shapes that don't even correlate to this subject, it's going to look weird and not believable. It's just going to look off. Like if you're drawing a shadow of a box and the box is this strange blobby shape with no corners, it's not going to make any sense. So whatever I'm drawing, the shadow has to have some semblance of the shape of the subject. You might be thinking, how do you do that when some shadows seem super long and distorted? And that's true. The lower the light source is in relation to your subject, the shadow does seem to stretch and distort. But once you know how to plot shadows, you can account for the distortion. It's just a matter of learning how to do it. But learn how to do it right and your drawings will suddenly advance to the next level. It really does make a difference. I would suggest starting with a small commitment. Make the time to do a still life. It doesn't have to be fancy or elaborate. Just put 2 or 3 objects on a white sheet, and the white sheet helps with the shadows. You could just see them better. Start with a single light source and not an overhead light. It's better to do it at an angle. For this exercise, try using a desk lamp or a ring light and set it off to the side and draw what you see. Commit to like a week of doing the exercise and see where it takes you. Drawing's all about exploration, and you can't expect perfection from the get-go. Everybody wants to draw perfectly or not at all, and that's just not realistic. Nobody was born an expert. I've been at this for over 40 years. You have to put in the hours of practice. You have to pay your dues. I mean, think about like Serena Williams and the Derek Jeter caliber athletes out there that they paid their dues. They put in the hours. They stayed out hitting balls or shooting baskets or swimming laps long after everybody else went home. And all they thought about all day long and dreamed about at night was going back out to do it again. And I hear beginner artists who say that they want to be able to draw more than anything, but they groan when you tell them they have to practice. And I don't get it. Like, why dread practicing when it's supposedly the thing you want to do more than anything else in the world? It's just odd. I would think that practicing would be like the thing you couldn't wait to do, not grumbling about it. Like, why aren't you carrying around a sketchbook and whipping that puppy out every chance you get, Get in a quick sketch here and there. I mean, if you're serious about getting good at drawing. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. I did write a blog post a long time ago about plotting shadows. It's a post on Medium. I think it's on Medium. If you're interested, I'll put the link in the description. I tried to explain things as simply as I could. It should be enough to get you headed in the right direction. So now I'm continuing with the wood grain of the deck. Usually when I have to do a background of any sort, I try to minimize it as much as possible. That way the main focus stays on my subject. So in this case, I'm following the direction of the wood grain, and I'm putting in small details here and there, but I'm not making them super crisply detailed, if that makes sense. That's why I'm opting to use a blending stump more than a pencil here. I can draw with that graphite that's already on the stump, and it creates a softer, blurry line. What I really want with this wood deck is just a hint of what it is, just the essence of it. So while I could go in and draw a hyper-realistic wood deck, I know that would take away attention from the dog. By creating softer lines for the wood, I'm drawing what your eyes would normally see. If you were standing there looking at the dog would be in focus, and the deck would not be in focus anymore. Or maybe like in a soft focus, if that makes sense. In other words, not crystal clear, because you're focusing on the dog. You can only focus on one thing at a time. Jesus, glare is so terrible. I apologize, guys. I swear the eyes and the nose don't have those white spots. They're not white. The graphite is causing a reflection, and the texture is not helping at all. The final image at the end will be glare free, I promise, because I actually scanned it. The good thing is, I think this was the last time I used this paper. So it was just a struggle. And here I am struggling with this fluffy white tail. You'll see that I'm going back and forth from the wood to the tail, and the wood to the tail, back and forth. The tail was just not showing up really well against the wood deck. So I'm trying to very gradually darken the wood so that the tail pops a little bit more. But remember, high noon exposure here, so everything was washed out. Come to think of it, I believe my boss took this photo with an old school flip phone. I'm glad the photo came out as good as it did. Take note that this is about as far as I'm going to draw the wood deck. I'm just letting it fade off into the background, and what I decided to do early on was to fill the rest of the white space, was to use some powdered graphite and dust it over that leftover space on the top, just to create the edge of the white on the white paper. Because remember, in the photo reference, you could see the bottoms of some of the potted plants, and that would have just been distracting. And I'm still not happy with the tail not popping enough from the wood, so why not just make the wood noticeably darker? It seems like that would have been easier, but I was still trying to give the appearance of the bright, super sunshiny day. And this would turn out to be one of those instances where you just have to decide to call it done before you push it too far and screw it up. So I'm continuing to add soft shading by drawing with the stump again. It's the easiest way really to add soft shadows. And I know by this point I'm ready to call it quits, but I'm still going to work at it a bit more. But like I said before, knowing when to stop is key. You don't want to overwork a piece. If you're sketching in a sketchbook, it's no sweat, like whatever, it's fine. Just call it done and move on to the next. But for a commission, it can be difficult because, of course, you want your client to be happy with the finished drawing, and you can have the tendency to keep messing with it. Well, I mean, at least I do sometimes. And who wants to work for however many hours only to ruin it at the very end? Not me. And you know what? In most cases, it's only you who sees the areas that were giving you grief. Your client will never notice. And it's just you because you've been staring at it for how long? Maybe chalk it up to perfectionism too. We all have it to some degree, I think. Like whatever we do, it's not good enough yet. If I could just fix this or that. But you know what? Boss lady never noticed. She was happy with the final drawing and wouldn't actually hire me to draw 3 more of her papillons. And in fact, she called me recently to let me know another one of her pack had passed away, sadly, and she'd like another portrait. So try to remember that in most cases, your client doesn't have a highly trained eye like you do. And unless there's a glaring error, it's likely that they won't even notice. That's not to say that you shouldn't bother doing your best every single time. It's just that sometimes you're nitpicking over some tiny thing, and chances are good that it's only you who sees it, and it'd be safe to let it go. Actually, a good thing to do is take a break. Like actually put your pencil down and leave it until tomorrow. Then you come back and look at it the next day with fresh eyes. Because it's also very possible that you've just been looking at it for too long. Like I said, give your eyes a break, and maybe when you come back the next day, that particular spot might not bother you as much, if at all. And speaking of giving your eyes a break, you should, it's like if you're working on a computer all day long, any optometrist will tell you to take a break every 20 to 30 minutes. Look at a point that's farther away, like 10 to 20 feet away, for a couple minutes, just to rest your eyes. With the computer, it's focusing on something close, but it's also the blue light from the screen. And with drawing, you don't have the blue light, but you are straining your eyes focusing on something so up close. So you still need to take breaks. And looking at things in the distance allows your eyes to relax. And I'm one to talk. Sometimes, or usually, I get so caught up in what I'm doing that I forget. Yeah, I do. I admit it. Surprisingly, though, a couple years ago, I started recording TikTok videos of my drawings, super time-lapsed videos, and I shoot the videos in 20-minute segments. So when the 20 minutes has ended, that's kind of my sign to stop, and look out the window and see what's going on across the street for a couple of minutes. And that helps. That's helped a lot too. So now I'm coming down into the home stretch with this one. I'm taking one last look and moving over the whole drawing, deepening some shadows. That was the Staedtler 4B that you saw. Put some value down and then use the stump to work it into the paper's texture. Again, trying to add shadow to white fur without making it look like gray fur. I'm using that's a Tombow mono zero eraser to pull out small strands of fur. And I'll have all of that in the description. And again, I think I just need to let it go at this point. Step away from the drawing. And I think I realized then that I kept doing the same thing over and over in pretty much the same spot. Let it go. Yeah, and that's going to be a wrap. All that's left is sign the work, remove the tape, and then it goes outside to get sprayed with a workable fixative to prevent smudging, and then he gets mailed home to his mama. So you got to be careful this is art tape, so it's less adhesive, but you still have to be careful with it because it can peel the paper. Just got to be careful when you take it off. Also, I have no idea why I was touching the paper with my bare hands. Jeez. Okay. Anyway. So I'd like to thank you all so much for joining me. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you missed my last video of the ring-tailed lemur drawing, I will put it here in the corner. And also, if you're into super time-lapse minute-long videos with no talking, my Instagram and TikTok links are in the description also. And if you dig what I'm doing here, please give me a like and a follow. Once I get my schedule on track, I'll be putting out 2 videos a month just like this one. And I would really love it if you join me. See you guys next time.